And it's interesting because when you look at it, you're not an influencer, you're a business and you're trying to sell. You're not just there to get views and likes, and they won't just equal a sale for you. So if you're getting a viral moment, that's great for a bit of a boost in brand awareness, but it doesn't mean people care about your brand. There's parts that are more measurable than others, but it all kind of is the funnel. So you're looking at the top, which is brand awareness, those are your views, like we talked about earlier. And then that middle ground is the trust building, and that's really focused on the trust building with your audience. And then bottom of the funnel is conversion. So you kind of have to focus your content in many different ways so that it all leads into the same place. And if you're lacking one or the other, you can kind of fall short in those areas.
Started today. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell. Hi, Kennedy. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Why don't you give our viewers and listeners a quick breakdown of who you are and what you do exactly?
Okay, so my name's Kennedy, and I run a business called Soboard Socials, and we specialize in content creation, social media strategy, and social media management month to month, and a few other add-ons such as art direction and shoot direction. I started doing that because I just noticed a huge demand for that in small businesses and a lot of potential for them to grow their businesses online. So I just kind of jumped into doing it for myself after doing it in-house for some other brands.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, we are obviously heavy on board with, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of them. And I think now businesses have to be, they have to have that presence in that space. What would you say for anyone that doesn't yet, maybe emerging businesses that haven't broken into that? What would you say is the number one thing for them to start up and just get into that space? What would be your number one advice? Okay, they've started a business, they've got their website, they've, all of that, and they're ready to go. And how do they do this?
So I would say kind of pick 2 platforms that are going to be your core platforms, and it will depend on your audience and your type of business. So if you're in B2B, that's kind of looking more like LinkedIn or Facebook's a bit more local. Or if you're in a mid-range of age demographic, Instagram's a really great one. But picking 2 to focus on, one core one and then a support one, is a great way to start.
What do you find is the most emerging platform at the moment?
Probably TikTok, but that's definitely still a bit of a younger audience. It's growing for sure, but would be the newest one.
Yeah. What do you find is the easiest to use?
TikTok.
Because I find Meta particularly hard to battle and wade my way through.
Yeah, it's because TikTok is ranked by content. So each piece of content can perform really well or really poorly, and it doesn't matter how many followers you have. Where Instagram, it's still weighted on how many followers you have and your engagement rates on your page as a whole. So it's definitely easier to enter into TikTok that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think would be considered the top 5 most common mistakes that brands do in order to gain new businesses on these platforms?
Top things that I see. Well, I think a really inconsistent feed is the one that sticks out like a sore thumb. When you look at a brand, you want to know that the care was there and that they're polished and professional. So when you see a lot of like mismatched branding, coloring, fonts, it just looks like the care isn't there and people can tell right away.
Would you say, because I know I sort of have done the digital marketing side of things as well. And absolutely like having that base, like this is our brand, this is who we are, and these colors flow through, these fonts flow through, flow through, if I can speak. I need to go back to the linguistic coach. So that is like a massive thing, and that can give you a massive uptick once you've got that settled. Yeah. Just that alone does a lot to, I guess, build a bit of confidence within the brand itself. So what do you think is the most underutilized social media tool to drive the business engagement?
I think people overlook stories because they don't get you followers and they don't get you likes. So the metrics aren't really like you're gaining something concrete from that. But you can really build trust and loyalty through stories because it's very like one-on-one and it doesn't live there forever. So you can be a bit more real and authentic with it and not worry about, are 80 million people going to look at this if the brand grows? So it's definitely a very like personalized way to interact with your audience. And I think that is a bit overlooked just because it's not giving you a number.
Yeah, it's not giving you sort of, almost that, not tangible, but that actual metric of what it's brought you back in. With the stories, say, what is your thoughts on basically just, because I know a lot of people will just repost their post into their story versus if they actually go on and they're talking to their camera and they're talking to their followers. What do you find is a better option? Is it a good, healthy balance between the both?
I would definitely say there's more to be gained by being personable and kind of showing parts of your day and showing people who you are than just directing them to your post, because it can feel a bit transactional when you're just saying, oh, go like this or go look at this because I want you to and I need you to, where you're more providing value and connection through showing them your day or what's going on behind the scenes in your business.
Situation?
Yeah, I do that a lot. And I feel like it just builds trust with the people that are following you and memorability. So there's a bunch of people online all the time and they're all kind of saying the same thing and you want people to remember who you are and why you're different. So that kind of helps people remember you when they see you the next time.
Yeah, I've always come back to a similar mantra of mine when I was sort of doing marketing and stuff like that. And, and we did have a past guest that was in marketing, and it was like, well, why does someone like Coca-Cola still need to advertise? We all know who Coke is. Likewise with like Heinz or something like that. And my thought has always, and correct me if I'm wrong, because if I need to go on a different train of thinking, power to it. I'm very open to these type of situations. But my thought on those brands that have got they feel like they've hit their peak in whatever, why do they still need to spend money on like advertising and on social media and stuff like that? To me, it's, if you think of like baked beans, right? You may eat them, may not. We all know what they are. But you think of a brand and that brand is generally Heinz, right? So it's just, I feel like it's that, as you said, that brand recognition, and that just keeps snowballing and just keeps earning more and more trust because that brand is still out there. Coke does not need to advertise. Everybody in the world knows who Coke is, where you can get it from, that it tastes great. Like they've nailed it. Yeah. So why do they need to keep advertising? And I guess it's just to continue having their presence at the forefront above their competitors, and showing that you can still trust them. They are still putting money into their product. They are still promoting themselves. Like, is that sort of a good way to look at it once businesses are thinking, well, what more can we get out of this?
Yeah. And I think like just staying top of mind with your audience and also developing with new audiences. So you kind of, there's what you built when the business started and the audience that was built for, but you also need to adapt to the new audiences that's growing in. So the new purchasers are those people who were kids when your brand started, but then now they're teenagers into adults, and you need to have your messaging kind of matching up with what they believe and they think as well as your business is growing.
Okay. So what would you think, so for B2B, because this is obviously an interest to people that watch into us. So they're running their own businesses, and a lot of them are B2B businesses. What do you think are some of the top most effective strategies to actually engage B2B?
Yeah, so we see a ton of educational content in that space. And I think that was being really pushed for a while. And it does put you in a position where you can really position yourself as an expert in your field. You look like you know what's going on in your industry. But where we see it, I guess, fall flat is that people aren't fully converting that into a sale. So people come on and they take all your information, that's great, and then they go and buy from someone else.
Yeah.
So making sure you're really following through the funnel all the way to the bottom in the conversion part as well. So you're providing that value, but then you're converting them and making sure that they know that you're the person they want to buy from is really important, and rather than just educating and then leaving.
Yeah. Okay. So how would you say, for an example, let's use podcasts because this is what we're doing, right? I was going to go outside into a totally irrelevant industry, but let's keep it into here. There's a million podcasts. Everyone's starting a podcast these days. How would you go, okay, this is you watch us because we are different in this way compared to the other 10 million auto podcasts that might be out there. How would you differentiate your clients to make that point of difference?
Yeah, so I think part of it is really knowing the audience and what their pain points are. So what do they want and how do they want to show up in the world, and how does that appeal to their desires and their fears? And then what is it that's specifically different about your business in comparison to other, and kind of leaning on the messaging for that is helpful in that way.
Yes. So do you have a client success story that you can share with us?
In terms of messaging, I would say I've just started working with a client who is appealing to an older demographic of women. And for them, there's a bunch of events that are kind of similar to it, but specifically for them, they know that their audience isn't younger people. It isn't people who are listening to current music. So they really lean on the nostalgia of that. And then they're looking at why those people are coming. So it's to have a girls' night out. It's to feel connection to other women. So we're really leaning on that sisterhood and empowerment messaging for them.
Like a real niche.
Yeah, super niche. And for them, that really makes their audience feel heard and understood, because that's what they're seeking in an experience. They're not looking for a ticket to a show. They're looking for a feeling that's coming from it.
Okay. And I guess that's the difference between, well, what is the difference between broad and niche social marketing?
So yeah, niche would be really a small group of people where it's a tiny demographic that you're speaking to with a really particular need. And then broad, we're looking at, say, a restaurant. So you're going to have multiple target audiences. They're going to range in age and location. Maybe it's travelers, and then it's also locals. And so you're kind of appealing to multiple people at once. And with that, it becomes a little bit more complicated, and you have to really lean on your analytics, because while speaking to one audience, you might be nailing it, but you're actually alienating another part of your audience. So kind of watching it, is this getting me a lot of engagement from one group, but am I losing followers from another?
Okay. How do you balance that?
Yeah.
So from an analytics, the metrics, they tell you what's going on, right?
I guess you mix it. But how do you...
Yeah, it depends on your goals. So when I actually saw that specific situation where it was messaging that was really gaining a lot of views and reach from one demographic, but really going against what
tanked on the other side. Yeah.
And we had to look at who is our primary buyer, how much is that like percentage weighted in, and then is this something we can afford based on what we want? So are we trying to really reach that demographic, and we don't care if we kind of lose a few of the other in the midst, or are we really trying to make this general and apply to everybody? So it's kind of tailored to where you're trying to head with your business at that time.
Okay. And to break it down to like keeping it simple, when we're talking about analytics and metrics and stuff like that, this is, all heavily based on like SEO and, what your keywords you're using, where you're pushing it out to geographically, things like that. Let's go like with your keywords and tags used to be a massive thing. Are they still relevant anymore?
So they're not relevant for reach. The head of Instagram has come out and flat out said that they're not going to get you more reach on your posts, but I still include them because it's just a way to throw in all of your keywords. You can also do that in your alt text, which is, it's actually for people who can't see to be able to hear what's going on in your post. But you can stuff them in there as well. But I've found that there's times where I've had to search something on Instagram and it does come up under that hashtag. So if I can put it out there and get both out of it, I might as well.
Yeah. Okay. And is that that hashtag situation across all platforms where it's just not as relevant, I guess, as what it once was?
I
know it came out with Twitter originally, didn't it?
I think so. I think
Well,
it's
now
more,
X, but
relevant in TikTok still. I think it does get you that reach because their algorithm is just more developed than Instagram's is. You'll notice it right away if you start using TikTok. Like, it's so catered to you. Where Instagram, it's not functioning quite as well. Or if you search something, it's not going to directly answer your question, and TikTok does.
Okay, so now that you brought up TikTok, I want to get into TikTok. I want to get into TikTok. So they're now allowing longer videos, so up to 10 minutes now, I think it is. How do you balance short form and long form content whilst keeping audiences engaged?
Yeah, so when TikTok started, it was all like really short, bite-sized content, like 7 seconds type thing. And now that they've introduced longer videos, they obviously want to keep people on the app longer. So they're rewarding people for making longer videos. And I'm seeing anything under 15 seconds really doesn't perform at all. But generally, videos are sitting between the 30 to 130 second mark. And that's where you're seeing the best results. It's not a ton of videos in that 10-minute range. When you see anything up to about 3 minutes, that's generally like creators that are really focused on storytelling or very educational content where the value is there and it's engaging all the way through. But just trying to make your video really long because you think you should isn't going to work, because you're going to lose the retention rate on the video, and that will negatively affect how it performs.
Quite often you do see that the platforms will reward by pushing your video out more by using, I guess, what they're currently focused on. So if they're focusing on now, okay, we want people to stay on the app longer, therefore if you have a longer video, they're on the app longer. So we're going to push that out to a wider, audience than what the slower one would be, which is probably why the ones under 15 seconds aren't performing as good as what they used to. How do people know when they've changed their ideas on what they want to do?
Well, you can kind of stay in the loop with it by following people who provide the updates on this. The apps do through different seminars, or the leaders of the apps. If you're not following them, there's a lot of people that regurgitate that information weekly. Or you can get emails that update you on them.
Okay. So TikTok's the main big one at the moment. And I think most people in that social media space know this. And if they haven't converted their socials into TikTok, they probably need to. Actually, I would say they do need to. In some way or another, because if you use it correctly, you're going, like, for your business, and you find out who, your target and who your audience is, you're going to still be able to target those people within TikTok. So with that, is there any other social platform that you see that isn't one of the big ones? So not in Meta, not TikTok, not LinkedIn. Is there any new one that we should be watching out for?
I feel like there was things popping up when the TikTok ban was like a thing.
Which lasted like 3 seconds.
So everybody was like, who's going to take this spot? And
so they went through that as well when Elon changed Twitter to X. It was like, right, everyone, let's leave and we'll go to another platform.
So that brings up, I guess, Threads. So I personally really love it because I just find it to be less political, kind of more fun than X is. And I find it really hard to get any engagement out of X lately.
Really?
Yeah. So, and Threads has been great. Yeah. So I would say that's something to look at. You automatically get all your followers from Instagram on Threads. So that kickstarts it pretty well as well.
So Threads is not something I've looked fully into. I still call it Twitter. I'm sorry, Elon. But because we still tweet, right?
Yeah, I still accidentally say it all the time.
I still tweet. What are we doing anyway, whatever, that's a whole other thing. But I am in that space on Twitter at X. And then I have a Threads account because, everyone was like, Threads, let's go Threads. I'm like, I better get on this. And then I got logged out and I don't know how to get back in. But so I've been like, it's too hard. It's probably died down. So it hasn't died down.
No, and when I was in-house, I found that it was a cool way to bring people into the brand because you can search things again by words. So if you're searching a word that's related to the business, then you can see all the tweets that are about it, and then just go in and one-on-one reply and say, hey, have you heard of this? And then people are coming over to your Instagram account to come check out your product.
So then that is building your... Okay. So with back to, I guess, your tags or your keywords in Threads. So you can still, in Threads, you can still search that and it's still going to benefit you.
Yeah.
Putting those in there.
Yeah. So, and the other way around, if you're looking for people who are looking for you. So you can search if you're selling jeans and you are looking for people who are looking for a good pair of jeans, you can search jeans, and then hundreds of tweets about where do I find the best jeans are going to come up, and you can actually individually reply to all of those.
Okay. How about cross-platform? Like pushing a different platform from X or to Threads or...
Yeah, I think the format for X and Threads is really similar, but it would be more cross-platform between Instagram and Threads because they're connected. Yeah. So you can automatically post an Instagram post to your Threads, or a thread it can pop up on your Instagram. So it's a lot easier in that way.
Okay, I see. I'm like you said before, focus on two main platforms. One being the primary, and the second being secondary, obviously. Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is, should you be pushing from the secondary or tertiary up into the primary, or just...
Depends, I guess, because there's different formats of what works on each platform. So if it's, all you can do and you only have a certain amount of time, it's still better to be pushing to two with the same piece of content if you are maxed out on budget or capability to do it. But for example, Instagram, you see a lot more aesthetic, polished content where people are kind of like further back in the frame and it's nicer text. And then on TikTok, you're seeing a lot of like, we're holding the camera, it's really close in your face. It's the platform native font. Not a lot of like polished effort goes into it. And that actually performs better on that platform. So there are kind of differences in what each platform wants to make it work.
So just to clear this up for people, so you've got your two that you're choosing. Are you referring to Meta as a whole?
No, I would say that I look at Instagram and Facebook separately.
So, okay. So then, all right. So you could do, say, Facebook, Instagram and Threads. And even though they're all Meta, your two could be Threads and Instagram. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
Got you. So social media landscape in 2025 emphasizes authentic, engaged communities over superficial metrics. So you work with lifestyle and event brands focusing on nurturing loyal customers, which aligns with this exact trend. Can you discuss how Soboard Socials creates meaningful connections?
Yeah. So a lot of times clients first come to me and they're like, I want to go viral. I want this many followers by this date. Yeah. And it's interesting because when you look at it, you're not an influencer, you're a business and you're trying to sell. So you're not just there to get views and likes and they won't just equal a sale for you. So if you're getting a viral moment, that's great for a bit of a boost in brand awareness, but it doesn't mean people care about your brand.
That's so true.
Or that they are going to buy from you. So those people who are engaging with all of your posts, who are your correct demographic, who are going to advocate for your brand, post it to their story, that's free marketing for you, tell their friends and family, that's who you should really, really be focused on.
Can I have an example again?
If you're getting a viral post, that's great for people know about who you are. Like I know about a cafe in Gold Coast really well, but I don't live there. So I'm not going to buy from them. Yeah. And so making sure that it's the people who live in your area and say they repost that to their followers, there are 1,000 followers, but that's 100% your demographic and they all live in the area. And they all are taking that credibility from that repost of that cafe or that restaurant, and they think it's a good one because someone they know has recommended it, or they just straight up go tell their friends because they see you all the time. So that's where you're seeing people convert into customers.
Converts into sales.
Yeah.
What type of I want to get into content. What type of content, so behind the scenes, user generated, have you found is the most effective for fostering trust and loyalty?
Yeah. So we touched on stories earlier, so that would be one way. And then we're still seeing high performance on anything that's really human. So if it's founder-led content, employee-generated content, user-generated content, anything that really brings that level of authenticity. And then with user-generated content and testimonials, that's really giving the social proof. It's saying, don't listen to me, take it from the people who've already worked with me. Yeah. So that can be really helpful if someone's already kind of at the point where they want to make the decision, but they want to hear that credibility before doing it.
So does a founder have to be interesting?
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, what's it called? There's like a founder movement almost going on right now. How has this happened, and what is that about?
I'm an accountant, so to follow an accountant as a founder, like,
I actually
so
always
boring.
use that example.
Dan, you can leave for now if you want.
I think it's really important to curate kind of what facets of your personality you're showing, because not every profession is going to allow for the same amount of showing who you are as a person.
Yeah.
As an accountant, you obviously need to be taken really professionally. You want someone to think you're really knowledgeable, so posting your partying pictures on the weekend is going to discredit you.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you're kind of marketing towards an early 20s demographic who's into fashion, that could make more sense for you because you're making it feel relatable to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of about knowing the audience first and then crafting a plan on what you're going to show them based on that.
And this is where you step in. This is your business and this is how you make money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would you do? You've got a founder of, say, I don't know, a construction company.
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing?
Well, it depends, I guess, on how, because you don't have to do it. It's definitely a way that it can work.
But like it's really taking off.
Yeah. So I'll pull away from the construction one, but I'll talk about someone who I know who's a coffee brewer.
Okay.
And they're also really interested in cycling. And I thought this is a great way because they go and door to door, bring the coffee beans to the people. And I was like, this is great because it overlaps the audiences where they're interested in coffee, they're interested in cycling, and then he can bring in that demographic that way. And it's still a professional thing.
Did he cycle the beans to his clients? 100% that would have been like, get on your bike, take the beans.
And I was like, we can just lean into this because you're really making that audience feel really known and you're making it very human and someone can see who you are and you're not just this untouchable entity anymore. You're a person who's really tried to make your business work, you're really passionate about it, and you have interests just like everybody else.
I'm just thinking of the local cafe on a Saturday morning with all the cyclists lined up.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I guess then going from that, how do you guide clients to balance the community building efforts with tangible business outcomes? So let's go to the cafe one, for example. How did that founder do in that situation? How did that actually bring him money?
Yeah.
How do you measure it?
So it's kind of, there's parts that are more measurable than others, but it all kind of is the funnel. So you're looking at the top, which is brand awareness, those are your views, like we talked about earlier. And then that middle ground is the trust building. And that's really focused on the trust building with your audience. And then bottom of the funnel is conversion. So you kind of have to focus your content in many different ways so that it all leads into the same place. And if you're lacking one or the other, you can kind of fall short in those areas.
Yeah, okay. I love that. That's really good.
I mean, it makes sense, because you're like, oh, that's the person that created this. And that in itself creates this inquisitiveness, I guess, to like, oh, that's the face behind the name. That's the face behind this brand. But why is it that? Is that all it is that sort of resonates with viewers and audiences in 2025 that sort of made this so big?
Short-term fad.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the way that I think about it is if someone needs a plumber, you're going to recommend someone you know if you can. So because you like them, you know them, you trust them, and it doesn't really probably don't really think about, oh, how good are they at their job? You just know them, and so you recommend them. And I think it brings a level of that where people start to feel like they know you through that. So they already start to they remember who you are. They start to like you if you have the same interests in them, which is often because if you've built your business, you're probably within your target audience as well.
Yep.
So I think it works in that way for sure.
So what if this founder has, say it's Dan, who doesn't know the social media landscape?
Yeah.
How does Dan so Dan's gone to you and you're like, this is the trend at the moment. Let's get you in front of a camera, get you on the socials. How do you coach him to be okay and actually deliver something that's going to work?
Yeah. So I think on my end, what I would do is, again, like crafting that image and deciding what parts of you are we going to show and how does it make sense for your business in a really strategic way, because it's easy to think that people just show up and they just show themselves and that's how it is. But it is strategic. At the end of the day, they've thought about what they're showing.
Yeah.
So that would be my end. And then talking to camera is obviously a difficult thing for a lot of people. And I actually met someone the other week who's a talking to camera coach. So
wow.
I was like, this would be perfect. I can refer you people who are struggling with this, because it's not something that everyone's used to. Yeah.
He said yes, please, as he's surrounded by, I think, 5.
Yeah. Help me.
Yeah.
Well, does Soboard Socials create the content for your clients?
So I do both. So for some clients, they make the content themselves. I generally think it takes a lot of time. So I've noticed that when people think they're going to make the content themselves, they end up just outsourcing it in the end.
Okay.
But yeah, we do both. So I
you give them a plan if they want to do it themselves.
Yeah. So I'll give them a plan, and it's all like everything will be scripted, and I'll tell you where to put the hook at the start of the video and make sure you have your call to action and then layer in this song at this second, So it becomes really like instructional when it is that way, and it's honestly the same amount of work sometimes doing one or the other.
I've literally yesterday learned about a visual hook.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So let's go into AI, because this is one that I have seen the upside and the downside of.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to go into the AI of, influencers actually being not a real human being. They are AI. This AI is raking in its own money, but it's mind blowing. But we're not even going to touch on that. But let's touch on like the analytics side, because a lot of the platforms, and this is changing, may have changed, is about to change, I don't know. A lot of the platforms, I guess, rewarded you, through lack of better words, of going onto their platform and scheduling a post through them and that pushing out via their platform. Now with AI, there's, scheduling platforms and stuff like that can push these out to all different places. I think like Opus being one. What I found, not in this business, in another one, is that I was then penalized for not doing it organically through that. I think it was TikTok that did this through their platform, because why is that? And is that changing? I found it is slowly changing.
Yeah.
But why is that a thing? And people that don't have the time, because there's a lot of platforms now where you've got to put content out on. Focus on 2, yes, but you kind of, I feel like you need a presence.
Yeah.
When you are a broad brand.
So you're talking about AI in the management of social media, not AI
not
content.
AI. Yes, I want to get into that too. But this in particular.
Yeah. So I think that definitely at the beginning, for sure, I saw, especially TikTok.
Yeah.
Definitely didn't work to post through a scheduling app, at all.
Yeah.
And the head of Instagram's come out and said that it doesn't matter if you schedule outside of Meta, and that's fine. I still think maybe it's a little bit decreased. It's not a huge amount.
Yeah.
But it has started to get better. I've noticed that there is the odd viral post coming through on TikTok lately, which is good to know, because I'm managing a lot of posts. So to not be able to schedule them is really difficult. But you can schedule through Meta if you'd like. It's just a bit glitchy. So they're not really up to date with that software enough to make it a viable long-term solution. Yeah.
I appreciate that you're talking about from your own experience. You're not talking about trends or something that's happening elsewhere. You're talking about from your own experience what you're seeing. I really value that. So moving back to AI in the content, have you started using different like image generators or?
Yeah, so I guess the number one thing that I would use is ChatGPT is just like an assistant. So it's really obvious when people are using it and not prompting it correctly or using it to generate the ideas in general. I still think it's really important to have your own creative ideas and to be able to prompt it really well to take on the voice of the brand, because it is just generating the same thing over, and you see the words like discover, blah, 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 and everything, and everyone's captions or the long hyphen everyone was talking about.
Yeah.
So it can be really obvious.
Explain the long hyphen for Dan.
Yeah.
So-
And our
Yeah.
listeners that don't know.
It went on for a long time where people didn't even notice. And then someone one day pointed out that ChatGPT uses the long hyphen in all their answers, which is something most people don't use in their writing.
I'll keep an eye out now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then brands are being called out for that, and it does remove that trust factor, that authenticity factor. If you think that everything's being made by a robot, it definitely it's harder to trust your brand.
So AI is really generalized, I guess. And whereas if you put something in that you create, it's unique.
Yeah,
That's what they're looking for.
So it's got to have some pretty strong prompts to go off of. Yeah.
So how can people find that healthy balance? Like, what are some of the ways to use AI but not look like you're using AI? Obviously, there's the prompts, as you said. But, I mean, when, again, people are posting to Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, like that. It is never ending. There'll be another one that comes out very soon, I'm sure. Like, how do we use AI to help us cover all of these different platforms?
I think it's like a sandwich. So it's, your idea. And then, like I said, the prompts. So you're filtering it through. Who's this going to? Who am I speaking to? What is my brand voice? Filter it through that. And then it's being checked over at the end. Because I just don't think you can copy and paste it and just say go and not look at it yet.
Oh, I've seen ones where they've copied and pasted the whole thing, not read it. And then it says down the bottom, if you want me to look further into this, please let me know. And you're like, you haven't checked that at all.
Yeah.
Emails are killer. People that like just put in the reply in.
So is there any specific areas in social media where it's just a no-no? Do not use any AI at all?
I would say it's not great in terms of conceptualizing, like just coming up with unique ideas. If you have an idea and you're like, oh, I want to kind of work through this idea, you're like, oh, this is my idea, but I need to kind of reframe it or give me some similar ideas to this. It works well that way. But if you're just like, give me 10 content ideas, they're pretty generic and horrible.
Okay.
So where do
Don't use AI.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where, I guess then I was just about to say, where do you see it falling short? But that's probably a good example.
And I also see it kind of falling short in the sense of image generation because like we talked about founder-led content, user-generated content.
Yeah.
The thing that's in common with all of that is people.
Yeah.
So I've even seen like brand shoots doing less well over the last few years because it's so polished and professional, feels ad-like.
Yeah,
and
it's not
AI
organic
is like
anymore.
a level above that.
Yeah.
So that human aspect is definitely lost in that way, and it's beneficial to have that in your business.
Where do you see it going now in a social media aspect?
I don't know. I would like, I guess from a personal perspective, I would like to think that we value people and we value people's ideas and the humanist aspect enough to keep the creativity of humans in it and then continue to use it in this way, but just streamline the processes of things. So making it easier to do a report. Still, I take all the numbers and then I have to go through them all and give outcomes of what that really means to a client. But it'd be easier if someone could just take that data and give me those answers. And I don't need a creative brain to come up with that. So just in terms of time and making it easier that way, I would love to see it progress.
It's a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
AI,
but keeping the, I guess, more artistic stuff to people.
Normal becomes boring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just got to keep it unique and artistic and ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
So I was just, I wasn't ignoring what you were saying, but what I was looking is that Neil deGrasse Tyson not long ago, like a few days ago, did like a talk and whatever at a function, and he went into the AI and in regards to the ChatGPT and what we've got access to now and stuff like that. And he came out and said, AI will force us all to the top of our game to be more creative than we've actually ever been before, to think outside of the AI box, which is bounded by what's on the internet. I think we will enter an era where creativity will actually be the golden age of creativity within itself. And that's so true because we've got AI that can create whatever we want. It's not going to be exactly what we envisioned in our head, but we can utilize it to do that. And we can, flick it out, 1,000 things if we want a day because it does it like that, right? but we are still the thought process behind it. With sort of small and startup businesses and things like that, what is one small bit of advice, I guess, you would give them when they're considering what AI tools to actually use?
I guess test and try things because you can always try, like even, and that applies to content as well. Anytime that something new comes out, it's good to just give it a go and then look back and see what kind of results did this give me in comparison to using something else or in comparison to not using it at all, and just kind of reflecting on the decision and really looking at the analytics of how it's working for you as a business.
Okay. All right. I'm actually surprised at how quick this has gone.
Yeah.
We're getting towards the end of things now. So I guess one of the last few things I want to ask is, with crafting sort of high impact, story-driven content for these niche audiences, how do you identify the right storytelling approach for these particular audiences? And on the back of that, how do you balance the creativity with that strategy?
So I think, number one, like we said, is knowing your audience, knowing who you're speaking to, and then kind of looking at what is the overarching theme of that. So we talked about the sisterhood and empowerment. So that's going to be kind of the overarching theme in all of our storytelling, whether that's in our captions or if a founder makes a video. And then what you look at then after that is how you're formatting it. So the platform that you're putting it on, or how most likely is my audience going to consume this content. So if it's an older audience, it might be they still want a long caption that's in a carousel, and that's how they're going to receive it best. I saw a really good example of storytelling. There's a brand called not a brand, it's a business in Melbourne. It's called Caprica. And they just like broke the internet because they hired a videographer instead of a social media manager to just come make a few videos. And they really took it artistically, and they made this really cinematic video, and then they voiced it over with someone calling the restaurant, and they're just like, hey, I think I left my sweater behind. I was there last night and we had the this and we had the that, and it was so good, and blah, blah. And they really dive into the menu and the experience. Yeah, wow. And it was just such a creative way to deliver that was still engaging, but also highlighted what was good about the restaurant.
Yeah, see, now that's something AI wouldn't be able to create. They wouldn't have that, I'm going to say thought, but AI doesn't think. But yeah, it doesn't have that process behind it to have that emotional touch that we can do as living, breathing human beings.
Yeah, and I thought that was important because it's like you can just take a picture of your food and say, come get this. Yeah. And we might have a craving and want the food, but it's really more so, why am I coming to this restaurant? It's to have an experience, to see the dim lighting, to feel this moment with my partner. It's more so about all those other things and the feeling that you're getting from it.
Yeah, it's the feeling, isn't it? It's the feeling. And I guess, we've probably all noticed this, but I no longer watch free-to-air TV, so I don't see ads per se. But the social media advertising has sort of almost taken that spot from advertisements on TV. So things like that almost brings like a nostalgic feeling to it as well. Like it's like, oh, this is what we used to watch on TV. There's now a TV production type thing on my phone as I'm looking at going to this restaurant. Like it's pretty phenomenal. And again, that's not something AI would have thought about. Yeah. That's humans that have done that, and the creativity of us that we can do that. So I love, like, for the scheduling and that, I love the AI because it makes life easy. But the actual thought processes and stuff, like I would just implore humans just to keep going. Use it as an extension of yourself, but don't use it as the whole thing. Yeah, that would be my it's me giving advice all about social media. That you are the expert, but that's just how I view it.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
How did you find yourself getting into social media management or content creation? Where did it start?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I went to school for business, so I've always kind of had that as a part of my personality and skill set. But my early career was in legal, and I'm a really creative person. I'm an artist and a musician as well. So that side of myself is something I wanted to have more of.
You lost it and becoming a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to be able to combine those two things and really take the strategy and creativity. And I was like, this is the perfect job for that. But it was actually COVID time when I started really leaning into social media because I was locked in my basement alone for like months and months and months. And TikTok was booming. So I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And I really got into it and started like doing well on my own account. And I was like, this is really interesting. And then, from there, I just kept leaning into it, learning more about it. And then I was taking on smaller jobs and then into full-time content creator and social media jobs. And
now you're a thriving business.
So I was working in those in-house jobs, and I was just approached by so many businesses who were like, I need help. And I realized that there's such a big demand for it because that shift has happened fairly recently. And a lot of brands that have so much potential to do better, but they just don't have the time or they don't have the resources or knowledge to do it. So someone needs to step in and, I guess, help them with that.
And that's where you come in and be like, I can curate all this for you. Amazing. Okay, so now on a question we like to
let's do it.
Normally end with.
You do it.
What is something that you think that people using social media can use? So just one overall thing as their biggest asset to move the needle in their business.
To move the needle, I think a lot of people think that social media has to be this put on show. And that it's really fake and inauthentic, and people who have aversion to social media think all of these things. And I think your biggest asset really is your personality and what makes you unique, and being able to be a bit more vulnerable and show those parts of it and your failures. Like, people love to hear this stuff, and it makes you superhuman and see what's going on in your day if it applies to your industry. I think that right now is what's moving things the most.
Celebrate what makes you unique.
Definitely just lean into those things and, a loud version of yourself, right? So you're you, but what makes you stand out, and then like really amplify that through your brand.
I think it's fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So just before we wrap, give us one last shout out on who you are, what you do, where people will find you. I'll have all your links in YouTube and on the podcast for people to actually connect with you. But give us one more elevator pitch of who you are.
So I'm Kennedy, and I run a business called Soboard Socials. We do content creation, social media strategy, and social media management, as well as shoot direction. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all as Soboard Socials.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kennedy. It's been a pleasure. To help support our continued mission to provide free, best-in-class advice from the world's most compelling business leaders, make sure to hit the subscribe button and ring that bell so you never miss an episode. See you next Thursday. Thanks for tuning in to The Business Game. If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay connected. A big thank you to our major sponsor, SmoothX, for powering today's episode, and join us again on the next episode of The Business Game, a podcast that moves the needle.